Today's gameplay is from Remedy's Control, the next game that I'll be reviewing. All footage is from early game, as to avoid any spoilers. Thank you for stopping by the channel. I remember the hype for the first Last of Us game. More specifically, I remember how hyped I was for the first Last of Us game. I was always a fan of Naughty Dog, having played the original Crash Bandicoot trilogy, and I even preferred the vastly inferior Crash Team Racing to Mario Kart. If I'm keeping a buck, even though now I know that Mario Kart is the superior game, there's still a special place in my heart for Nitrous Oxide and his specific flavor of fuckery. What I'm trying to say is, even if Naughty Dog hadn't dropped a trilogy of bangers starring my generation's closest parallel to Indiana Jones, I'd still have at least been a bit interested in The Last of Us. Still, they proved it with Uncharted, and by the time the first Last of Us game dropped, everyone was well aware that Naughty Dog, as a game studio, does cinematic masterpieces better than most filmmakers. Everyone except my then girlfriend, who was about to learn the hard way. I remember getting a copy from GameStop, RIP to them, they're not dead yet, but when they die, because I know it's coming up, and returning home. My girl was not familiar with Uncharted at all, and when I told her it was by the same studio that did Crash, I think she expected something else entirely. I popped the game into my PS3 and let it install. Forever and a day later, I started the game and roused from my bed as Sarah, Joel's daughter. Within 5 minutes, the world had gone to shit. Joel appeared and wiped the neighbor's nose with a pistol. The farmhouse down the road burned as we drove by. The people ran through the streets, though some were clearly chasing and killing the others. Insanity. Before I knew it, I was no longer Sarah. She couldn't walk, and I assumed control of her father, Joel, desperate to save his little girl. A few moments later, and Sarah was gone. I looked over to see my girlfriend visibly bawling. 10 minutes had passed since I started. Guys, I'm Mr. EMP. Welcome to I Make Plays TV. I am a huge fan of The Last of Us, and I'm telling you this to say that by the end of the first game, I was, an emphasis on was, more than a little invested in Joel, Ellie, and the other characters that Naughty Dog created. If I'm being honest, a part of me still is invested. Unfortunately, sometimes, for some people, investments don't work out. The second part of this video contains spoilers for The Last of Us 2, per the recent leaks. Now, leaks could be wrong, but honestly, the chances of that aren't looking too good. I'll make sure I'm extremely clear as to where the spoilers begin. First things first, I want to give my opinion on the circumstances surrounding these leaks. And while I'm at it, share with you how I feel about the leaks in general, because if we're being real, nobody is supposed to have access to this information. Nobody is supposed to have seen these cutscenes, and now that everybody has these things or access to these things, it has to be taken into account that someone's work was outed. As a creative myself, that's a huge deal. I couldn't imagine you guys having access to the script, let alone access to something like my novel or web series that I've been working on. Those things are, generally, to remain deeply personal, only to be shared with those privileged enough to be given access, and only when the creator gives permission. Now, with that being said, reasons be damned, there's a snake in their grass, so Naughty Dog are gonna have to pull an OT Genesis and cut it. See, along with details of the game, which seem to be for the most part accurate, came a theory that karma came knocking on Naughty Dog's door. Now, I'm not gonna get into the whole crunch culture debacle, at least not in this video. I could likely beat that horse on its own for some time if I were so inclined to beat the shit out of farm animals. Actually, that's 2 videos in a row that I've mentioned beating horses whether dead or alive. You know what? Read nothing into that. Just know that I very likely will beat that horse when I'm desperate for content. Anyway, the rumor is that an ex-Naughty Dog employee, cloutless and disgruntled, leaked the content for sweet, sweet revenge. As someone that's about petty as hell myself, I can see why they would do such a thing. I can also confidently say that if this is true, it's a dick move. It's worth noting, Naughty Dog has denied the claims of a disgruntled employee leaking their game. They've even claimed to have found the party responsible for the leak. All I'm going to say is that, of course Naughty Dog would say that. These accusations and admittings of crunch are honestly not a good look for them by any stretch. The reality of the situation, though, is that this Naughty Dog won't be punished. Regardless of the leaks, this game will sell, and it will be lauded by critics. Mark my word, I might not be happy about it, but it's true. That is to say that ultimately, nothing I say here really matters. Not that the opinion of a beginning YouTuber in the gaming space ever really matters. There's so many of us that a dozen of our opinions aren't worth a dime, but I'm gonna throw in my 2 cents anyway. While I definitely am disappointed in the spoilers, and I'll say as much in the latter half of the video, I acknowledge that though we met and fell in love with Joel and Ellie in 2013, Neil Druckmann and the team at Naughty Dog had been on journeys with them long before that. A game just doesn't pop into existence, especially one that's so heavily driven by narrative. These characters were crafted, if the rumors of crunch cultures always having been a thing at modern Naughty Dog are true, painstakingly. They are not our characters. And it's here where I believe the creatives at Naughty Dog were done a disservice. I think that a lot of people, myself included, when we're fans of something, forget that we're someone's audience. We get too close, and that's really easy to forget in an interactive medium like video games, where we control the actions of whomever and whatever is in front of us. Now, this isn't so much of an issue for games like Tetris or Pong, but certainly is an issue for things like Witcher 3, today's Control, and The Last of Us. Those games put us in control of a character, and it's up to us to get those characters from a predetermined point A to point B. We might take the scenic route, do a couple of side quests, maybe find a couple of collectibles, but we'll eventually be at point B hitting all of the necessary story beats along the way. A game can be Mass Effect and have a few endings. Shit, a game could even be Nier Automata and have 26 of the damn things. The fact remains that every ending was written and brought to life by a team of artists. We as gamers were merely given the privilege of nudging the characters along toward a finale. We've never been able to decide the finale, and I'd argue that that shouldn't change. I know the words creative vision sound pretentious, but it applies perfectly to the situation that we're seeing here within The Last of Us 2. We have a lot of details, but we don't have all the details. And any good writer will tell you that it's the little things that the audience really appreciates. No matter how many times I've tried to set the scene for someone, I can't accurately describe the tension in the very last scene of the original Last of Us. It's something that has to be seen for yourself, for you to understand how hard accepting what had just happened at the Firefly Labs really was for both characters. Things can get lost in translation, and though some of the leaks have video with them, we just get speculative text of some of the in-between. It's not enough for me. I may not like the direction that they've taken things, but I want to see how we get to the advanced darkness that waits at the end of the dark tunnel. I can respect their rights to do as they please with their characters, as I would hope people would respect my rights to do as I please with the characters I create. I'm still going to be on my bullshit though. Spoilers for The Last of Us 2 from this point on. If you're not aware by now and are still watching, I'm going to give you another moment to leave before I say it. Joel doesn't make it through The Last of Us 2. Worst of all, if the rumors are true, you as the player not only bear witness to, but are complicit in the act of our hero's death. I use the term hero lightly, as The Last of Us and every other zombie movie or game to ever exist has taught us that there are no heroes. In fact, for the second half of the game, you're rumored to play a character named Abby that views Joel and Ellie as villains who have taken important things from her, and maybe more importantly the world. And technically she'd be right. Abby was seen in the trailers for The Last of Us 2 all those years ago, and fans collectively speculated in regards to who she could be and what role she could play in the tale of Joel and Ellie. Regardless, she was certain to play a role. Apparently one of the Firefly doctors that you mow down to save your daughter had a daughter of its own. On its own, this is an interesting enough twist. It was obvious enough that Joel wasn't going to make many fans by choosing to be a dad over the fate of the world. It's expected. What nobody could have expected is that Abby would be this big of a focus and would be in the role for what appears to be much of the climax and the finale of the game's sequel. That's a deal breaker for a lot of people. I can't necessarily say that it's a deal breaker for me, as I've always been a fan of Naughty Dog's character interactions in these sort of cinematic games, but for a lot of people it is. That's it. They're done. Just that alone would be enough for a lot of twisted internet nipples. Now, not only is Abby the main character for the second half of the game, she's also the one that offs Joel with a golf club before you take control of her. That's right, she gets her revenge, continuing the cycle of violence. I get what they're doing. They're not being subtle about it. They're saying that everything comes down to your point of view, your perspective. They want you to literally walk in Abby's shoes so that we understand, even though we love Joel and Ellie, that they've done wrong and there will always be people who want to do them wrong in return. Again, like I said, the vicious cycle. I think they might have been a bit heavy-handed in application, though. Yada yada, blase blase, morals, themes, and all that bullshit. I'ma just say it like this. Most of the gaming audience, or at least the most vocal portion of the gaming audience, ain't really here for it. They think that they're here for it, but they ain't really here for it. They ain't here for what The Last of Us is. A lot of people these days are only interested in the familiar, and The Last of Us makes it clear that the familiar and the comfortable never last. I'm not here to say that those people are wrong for being diehard fans of a piece of media that is undeniably a masterpiece, but what I will question is that when they ask for more as fans, what are they really asking for? Are you asking for more of the same, exactly as that we had before? If so, you have to ask yourself, what did you have before? Yes, we had Joel and Ellie, but there was far more than that. The side characters that we met along the way established that everybody is dealing with what the world had become in their own way. Tess, Bill, and Sam were all characters with their own things to overcome in this apocalypse, and I'd argue that their entire stories were worth telling. They may not hold the fate of the entire world in their hands, but they certainly hold the fate of the world as they know it. What I'm saying is that there's an entire planet of characters with their own motivations in the Last of Us universe, and not all of those characters are going to like the ones that we like. That doesn't mean we can't come to appreciate these new characters for who they are. Yes, we know that Abby is the daughter of a Firefly, but in reality, we don't actually know who she is. I'm curious to find out. I can't say the same for the internet. It's really crazy how many people I've seen swear this game off. So many people have put out videos boldly declaring that the leak saved them $60, and I'm just sitting here thinking to myself that the point of video games has always been the experience, not the points per se. Well, yes, the points too, but what I'm talking about are the ability to say that you've seen what a game has to offer gameplay-wise. With that comes the ability to decide if you enjoy it. Now, it's one thing if a game is not your thing. If you don't want to play it because it's not your thing, that's up to you entirely. But if you like these sorts of games, I think it's stupid to deny yourself hours of interactive storytelling because you don't like how the story ends. I mean, Game of Thrones Season 1 through 6 are still super fucking dope. Those are my thoughts on The Last of Us leaks, or I guess more importantly, my thoughts on people's thoughts. My opinion can pretty much be summed up simply. Everybody do you, because I'm going to do me and enjoy The Last of Us 2 when I get a chance. I'll be covering it on this channel with reviews. I'll likely do a preview with some tip videos when it does come out. This was the first episode, though, of I Be On Bullshit, where I give thoughts on things going on in the industry. If you enjoyed this, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and maybe follow me on Twitch, Twitter, and all that. Thanks for stopping by my channel. This is Mr. EMP, signing off for I Make Plays TV.